Studio International has come to the City of London to view Sculpture in the City 2015. Founded in 2010, Sculpture in the City is a collaborative enterprise between the City of London Corporation, the elected body which looks after the square miles global business district around St Paul's Cathedral, local businesses and the art world. Their intention is to engage new audiences with works by established and emerging contemporary artists. We spoke to the co-director, architect and art manager, Stella Ioannou. Stella Ioannou, thank you so much for coming to meet us here today in the city next door to St Helen's Church. I want to ask you, how did this idea to exhibit sculpture in the city first come about?
So basically what happened way back in 2010, which now feels a very long time ago, the City of London Planning Department entered a consultation with the local businesses as to how they wanted to see the area developed around all the new tall buildings that were on stream to come out of the ground. It's an area which the Planning Department has designated as a tall buildings site. That means that what is referred to as the Eastern City Cluster is an area where tall buildings can be erected without interfering with the views to St Paul's, which then explains why we have buildings as tall as the cheese grater and more buildings which are coming out of the ground, 22 Bishopsgate and the Scalpel just across the road. So within this consultation process, there was a very clear and defined, let's say, idea, request, suggestion to see how contemporary sculpture would sit in this area of contemporary architecture. And that was very much the beginning of what we now call Sculpture in the City, 5 years later with 14 artworks on a rotating basis yearly.
And do they stay within those spaces once you've exhibited them? Do they remain in that space?
It's a very dynamic project. So every year, every summer, we remove the previous summer's installation and replace it with another set of artworks. And over the years, it has grown as a project. So in 2011, we showed 4 artworks, and now in 2015 we have 14 artworks on site. So in total we've exhibited up to 40 artworks over 5 years.
You're saying it as though it's quite a simple process, but I can bet that it's really complicated. Can you just lead us through how you select the work and how on earth you get it actually to be in a public place?
First of all, 5 years later the project is much more established. The majority of galleries and artists who we've worked with are very aware of the project by this point. So in brief, because there's obviously a lot more involved, we make an open call for submissions and collate a very long list of artworks on offer. We do not commission work, so everything that we've shown has been pre-made or has been shown before or has just been made by the artist, or the artist has chosen to produce another set from a series of artworks so that we can show it. So yeah, we don't commission. So we work with a pre-existing long list of artworks which will be available for the period that we want to exhibit.
Can I ask you, who puts together that list?
I do.
So you're the selector.
Well, I'm the collator, and then now we have an arts advisory board which includes Ivona Blazic from the Whitechapel Gallery, Jane Allison, who's the head of galleries at the Barbican, Robert Hiscox, Lady Madeleine Besborough from New Arts Centre, Roche Court, and Wendy Fisher, who's a public art patron and sculptor herself. They then go through the very long list of artworks. For example, for the 2015 selection, we had 65 artworks on offer.
And who put that list together? Was it galleries that contacted you and
Yes.
suggested artworks?
Yes, exactly. And I work with the galleries at the very beginning in collating the works that will be available. There was a short list then of 22 artworks from the 65 selected by the Arts Board. And then the process involves me walking around with each of the selected artists and galleries to select sites where the artwork could be shown, where the artist is happy for that particular artwork to be cited. It's extremely important that we do everything with the artist. This isn't a plonk and go project. This is very much about the site being the context and not doing anything without the artists themselves. And then at the same time, there's a technical team, a project management technical team, which looks at all the site constraints from weight to health and safety, planning issues, because we are working in this very unique urban context, which isn't your archetypical sculpture park. We're not working in rolling green grassy hills. We're working on very hard surfaces in the majority of cases where we can't build foundations because there are basements underneath. So there are many, many issues that normally you wouldn't necessarily have to consider. And between these two processes, we end up with a final installation, which also involves speaking to all the landowners, the city, going through various committees, city arts initiative boards, and very much everything being governed by our own partner board, because the project is delivered in partnership with 10 of the local businesses now. So there are many stakeholders, let's say, involved.
Very complicated. But what happened is, from my point of view, walking around these exhibits, it's remarkable that they actually bring into view the ancient and modern architecture also, and so that you're enlivening all the spaces and you have people interacting with the work too. Were you expecting that?
Well, to be very honest, when we started the project and delivered the first small sculpture in the city in 2011, it was very much, you could argue, an experiment in what was possible. And we found from the first year that the response from the public, the local workers, the local businesses was so strong that in many ways we had to do another one. And that's been very much the case as we've kind of gone on since then. But what I always find fascinating is watching people interacting with the artworks when we first installed them. So we always install over the weekends because the production of the installations is massive. And we are forced to do it obviously at the weekend because then we can make road closures, we have big trucks in the city, cranes, everything that you can possibly imagine. But then coming down on the Monday morning and watching people's reaction as they walk past the new pieces of sculpture for the first time is always fascinating and always kind of makes the project so much more human in many ways. But also watching on a day-to-day basis, like today, I can, if I glance over, I'll see somebody posing in front of the artworks for a photograph. The artworks themselves very much enhance the area, which has such a high architectural tourism footfall. In many cases, there are particular spots where people want to be photographed with the artwork, and for example the gherkin in the background, because it makes for a double iconic shot in the City of London. And the whole idea of how people pose now with the artwork. So for example, I've seen on numerous occasions people replicating the poses of Laura Ford's cats, which are on the corner of Bishopsgate and Leadenhall Street. And the artworks themselves generate many poses, which over the year I see reproduced again and again and again and again. So that's always a very interesting part of the project itself.
Do you have an educational program in place as well? Can you talk to us about that?
We do. It's very important to us, and again we've been running it since day one really of the project. So now in 2015 we've worked with 9 schools in total, both secondary and primary schools, and we run an education program which is delivered for us by Open City, the Open House Education Program. Each school has 4 workshops each, 2 on site and 2 in school, and the students themselves there's the whole work that they do is about looking at the architecture, looking at the design, understanding how the artwork sits within the urban context, building viewing towers, doing drawings on perspex, both from the very top of the towers on the windows and then very much at ground level. And we've worked with approximately 300 students this year, and again the program itself grows year on year.